Good morning, everybody. What's going on? Jeremy from I Motivate Me. Welcome to another episode of the Fitness and Health Investment Initiative. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about cardiovascular training and its physical impacts, as well as, and most importantly, its psychological impact on how we think and being able to lift our constraints and fears of our external environment during these runs in order to problem solve, in order to come up with various solutions or various perspectives about things that are on our minds. We as Americans have a lot of obligations externally, whether it be professional or personal, and those things have a lot of other externalities that further deviate us from our purpose in life, and we end up deviating away from that. We gain more anxiety over time, and the more external things that we have involved in our lives, the more distracted we become from the solutions to life's problems, the basic problems. And when we become hyperstimulated and confused by so many external things that occur over time, we internalize these things and they stay inflammatory in our minds, right? This is a big blanket of emotional abuse that keeps us irrational and limiting our brain capacity to solve problems, okay? And so I want to talk a little bit about the physiological aspect, but also the psychological aspect. So thank you for joining me on today's show, and let's get going. So, what I'm going to do, I've got the shirt on, I'm going to go throw some shorts on momentarily and go for a run. Today is day 3 of my training. Monday and Tuesday were basketball. We do a lot of explosive jumping, a lot of lateral and vertical movements on a planar surface. And so we're training a lot of hip muscles, the knee joint, from the hamstring to the glutes and the quadriceps, all the way up to the shoulders when you're playing and banging around with a bunch of young guys, which is what I did especially yesterday. I like to train solo, but every now and again I'll play pickup ball. At my age, we have to be able to rationalize and manage our risks, okay? So we increase our risks of getting injured when we play competitively like that. Anyway, getting back here. So we have utilized high intensity interval training. That's what basketball is. A lot of short, high explosive movements with a lot of impact on our joints, high impact and high intensity on our joints and our muscles, right? So this is where we're targeting our fast twitch muscles or our type 2 muscle fibers, okay? And these are responsible for our for power in a short period of time. So we want to get from point A to point B in a short period of time. That means we've got to sprint, and thus we have to use these high explosive type of muscle fibers. So that's from a physiological perspective, and being 37 years old, I've got to do these activities in moderation, okay? Now, how is cardiovascular fitness good for your mentality and the other aspects of our holistic fitness? Remember, we have our physical, our mental and emotional, and then our spiritual fitness. Okay, the spiritual fitness is going to come where we realize a purpose. Okay, we start doing the things that we want to do in life, and we incorporate from a holistic perspective, from physical fitness to professional endeavors, whatever the case. We begin to do what we want to do as opposed to what is required of us to do to pay off debt, loans, whatever the case. We seek money to pay debt off and to live a life that we're programmed to live, which can be detrimental to us. We talk about ultra consumerism and the external. In the intro, I mentioned how all of these externalized things in our lives also deviate into more externalized things. So all of these become overwhelming and become distractions. And this unconsciously creates like a fear blanket of anxiety, and anxiety limits our brain's capacity. We have to shut down parts of our brain and our organs in order to facilitate this fear, and that keeps ourself, all of our organs, from collectively understanding what in the heck is going on actually. And so when we try to solve problems, a lot of times we get stuck because we are in fear or we have anxiety. 1 in 4 Americans, older Americans, take psychotropic drugs. If that at all indicates as to where we are as a society psychologically and emotionally, right? That will limit your ability to problem solve. You will feel like you are isolated and that your options are limited. Let me tell you, that is programming that is meant to be. It's designed for that. Anxiety and fear are known to have this effect on the human mind. And so what happens is when we go running, we are vascularizing those brain cells that otherwise would be shut down. All right? And what is essentially happening is that running actually has a euphoric effect by which it's got a cannabinoidal effect, which I've talked about in previous videos, is very similar to the effect that cannabis has on our minds. Okay, you end up in a state of euphoria in a sense when you ingest marijuana, THC, let's say. So what's happening is when we can lift, and that euphoria represents a lifting a lifting of these constraints, these emotional constraints that we have. And when you remove those emotional constraints, you then invite more opportunities to discover solutions to problems that you didn't even know existed. Number one, you start to be able to identify the real problems. Fear and anxiety keep you in a false sense of understanding your own life, and therefore we think we understand the problems, but those problems are the facade for the real issues. And when we are able to develop a sense of running euphoria, let's say, various processes are occurring in your brain and your heart and all the communications between these organs in your body that facilitate equilibrium while you're exercising, right? And in this process, we are lifting the constraints, the psychological and emotional constraints of fear and anxiety. And in doing that, we unconsciously allow that's removing the ego, right? All of that stuff, who we think we are, we're able to peel it off and get to the real problems that lies within the self. And in doing so, when we run and vascularize and we temporarily alleviate, if you will, those external problems, we lift those things off, and we're temporarily now living in the purpose. Your purpose is taking care of your body. Number one, you have to. It's your temple on this planet. And if you don't take care of it, you won't be on this planet for very long. When we remove these psychological and emotional constraints or barriers, we lift them off, and it gives you a moment to breathe, like literally and metaphorically. Okay, we can then physically breathe and spiritually breathe, and this alleviation allows for more information and data to be considered, because it is that emotionality that constrains us to identities of who we think we are, or that ego. And the minute that we strip away that ego and we go for a run and we focus on the self as opposed to the external, which is the ego, if you follow me, we then provide ourselves more of the ability to take in more information and more consideration for solving the real problems. And even before that, recognizing the true problems. That's what running does. It alleviates these emotional constraints that blind us from our true purpose and understanding what the actual problems in our lives are. That's what running is all about when it comes down to it. You're able to streamline your focus on one thing. And what happens is you start to think about these individual things. You may be able to focus on one thing while you're running. All right, which is very important, because if we're living externally and we have all of this confusion in our minds, which I'm willing to bet a lot of people have, we can then focus on one problem. And then in that, because we've removed the psychological and emotional constraints that keep us imprisoned into a certain programming, we can then program ourselves because we can identify the real issues that exist. That's the power of fear. That is the power that anxiety has on our lives. It keeps us blind from the self. Running and exercising, prolonged exercise, is a great way to alleviate that burden. Okay, it's beyond a burden, but that's what cardiovascular training does. That's what vascularizing the mind does. And that's very important to understand when we talk about mind control. We seek control over our own minds, yet when you hear people talk about mind control and manipulation, everybody says conspiracy theory. Oh God, we've got another one. No. The only conspiracy theory is that people aren't listening. That's the conspiracy theory. What programming is keeping people from listening to this, right? Because that's the real fear that keeps us from identifying the real problems that exists. And we therefore blame other people externally as opposed to looking within. So go for that run today and look deep within and remove those constraints by vascularizing your mind, create those new neurological pathways, elevate the scapula with these small core muscles in your thoracic rib cage that helps you breathe. We call this respiratory drive. And when you get out and walk or run for an extended period of time, we are vascularizing the mind and we are connecting the mind with the body, and we are reinvigorating those muscular connections between the mind and the muscle fibers, okay? So these motor neurons are being activated and they stay active. And then thus those muscles can maintain their vascularity, or the capillaries that are within these muscles stay capillaries instead of going away, because with our inactivity, those capillaries will recede and we will lose muscle mass and metabolic health in those muscles, right? And so with that being said, God bless everybody. Get out there, walk, do your active recovery, or if it's a day where you're on, get to the gym, train your body, train those muscles. Remember the shoulders, right? Internal, external rotations, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and the neck. We want to maintain range of motion in our neck. Regardless of our age, it deteriorates over time. Check out any number of my workout videos. They're not going to be easy to follow. They're just supposed to show you how to do each exercise, and you can incorporate them daily into your resistance training or cardiovascular training, whatever it is you decide to do, because we've got to stay neuromuscularly activated all over, okay? We need to protect our joints and our health, all right? It's good for our holistic well-being. So thank you for joining me today. God bless and stay motivated.